let's talk about razors, because this video is sponsored by Dollar. No, I'm just kidding. I wish I had a sponsor. Honestly, I don't even shave. You have to replace a blade every time you use it. And also, like, that specific company that I kind of mentioned earlier, you can't even recycle the blades and like the razors. Like, come on, that's so bad for the environment if you have to replace it every month. Come on. I wanted to talk about razors today. 3 specifically that I think will help with simplifying life and just help with making life a little bit easier to navigate through. Now, all of you have probably heard of the first one, but I've just recently learned these other 2 razors that I thought were really insightful and really interesting, so I thought I'd share. I think that they're really useful for just helping to kind of help like reduce stress and also just make life easier to go through. So you already have too many things on your plate. Why are you thinking about more things? Especially with the internet, just like spitting out theory after theory of just misinformation, fear mongering, all these different ways to really just try to motivate a base using like as confusing of a like explanation as possible. I just think that a lot of people, including me, are easily duped into believing these explanations that are often harmful physically, mentally, emotionally, socially. So let's go over these 3 razors. So the first of these sayings is Occam's razor, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have heard Occam's razor, right? Which is basically, a lot of people think that it means just go with the simplest explanation. That's the one that's right. So Occam's razor is actually very often misunderstood. So a lot of people think that Occam's razor says you just go with the most simple explanation. That's the correct explanation. And that's not actually true. So it's not saying that the most simple explanation is the explanation. It's saying that you should start with the most simple one. And then if you can find evidence that counters that, then you cancel that out or you cross that out and then you go to your next hypothesis. And then if you find evidence that that's not right, then you go to your next one. And then so on and so forth until you find the correct explanation or you find one that doesn't have evidence that goes against it. This is mainly because the most simple explanation has the highest chance of being correct. Now, why is this? So let me give you an example, right? So if I saw you at the grocery store buying carrots, which one is more likely? 1, that you're a banker? Or 2, that you're a banker and your pet rabbit just ran out of food? So actually intuitively, a lot of people might actually pick the second one. You're buying carrots because your bunny ran out of food, right? But if you really think about it, it's actually more likely that you're just a banker. Why is this? It's because the chance of 2 separate events occurring at the same time must be less than or equal to the chance of either of those events happening separately. So just to drive the point home, I'll give you another example. Which one's more likely? The chance that you win the lottery or the chance that you win the lottery while itching your butt? Right? So so the chance of you winning the lottery has to be greater than or equal to the chance of you winning the lottery while itching your butt. It's only equal to while you're itching your butt if you're always itching your butt. Then as long as there's no evidence that refutes the simplest hypothesis, then you stick with that. And when there is evidence that refutes it, then you go on to the second most simple hypothesis. And then the third, and then the fourth, until you find one that you can't find evidence against it. And that's most likely going to be what you should stick with. So that brings me to the next razor that I just learned about, which is called Hitchens razor. So Hitchens razor, which I just learned about recently, basically says that what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. So what does that mean? So what I think it boils down to is there's no real point in arguing whether or not something is true or false if there is no evidence to prove whether or not it's true or false. If someone makes a claim or someone tries to state a fact, then it's their responsibility to kind of prove that fact to you, right? You are under no obligation to believe that fact until they give you the evidence. So I think one thing you can take from Hitchens razor is that it's good to stay skeptical and it's good to kind of take everything with a grain of salt when people are just all talk and they have nothing to really back up their claims. If someone makes any claim, even if it sounds good, reasonable, if it helps you and if it benefits you, then if they have no evidence, well, I mean, the claim is shaky, right? There's no foundation, and it requires evidence, it requires support. And then only after they get the evidence and they can somehow like at least back up their claims, only then should you start believing their claims. Now, the last razor I want to talk about is called Hanlon's razor. So Hanlon's razor, what is it? You might already know this, but Hanlon's razor basically states that you should never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. So Hanlon's razor actually reminds me of like that stereotype where like you have a relationship and then the guy does something stupid or like unknowingly does something that's wrong, and then the girl automatically assumes that the guy is malicious or is purposely doing something just to like spite her or whatever. And that's kind of what Hanlon's razor reminds me of. Because let's be honest, as a guy, we're pretty stupid. We're pretty stupid, especially socially. I don't know. I don't know things and whatever. But this isn't just with relationships, right? Like this often like you're in a relationship with everyone you know, right? With your coworkers, with your boss, with your family, with your friends, with your teachers, right? With everyone. There's a social contract between each of those people. And if you automatically assume malice, then it's a lot harder to communicate effectively, and it's a lot harder to really solve the problem because you're blinded with rage, you're blinded with contempt, you're blinded with disgust even. If we kind of start at a level of just, this person's out to get me, then it just makes life a lot harder, right? Like, humans are usually naturally trusting. I mean, there's a few experiments, there's a few studies on that. Maybe I'll talk about that in another video, but humans are more often than not, unless they have some underlying reason, but more often than not, humans are just more willing to trust others, right? We're naturally social creatures. So like we oftentimes we depend on one another to survive. And if you just assume that the other person is stupid and has no malintent, then it's a lot easier to maintain that trust and deal with the problem more rationally. So this kind of relates to Hitchens razor. If you don't have any like authentic evidence that that person is out to get you, out to backstab you, out to be malicious, then try not to assume that they have ill intent and that maybe they're just stupid. Maybe you just need to talk to them and clear up the problem, right? Maybe there's a misunderstanding. I feel like this also works the other way as well. If you have evidence that a person is malicious, if it happens super often, or it just becomes more and more improbable that that person is just stupid and that person is like actively trying to harm you, trying to do whatever, right? Don't be blinded by love. Don't be blinded. Don't have rose-tinted glasses. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, right? Like, think rationally and think, okay, like the fact that they were wrong this many times, or the fact that they did something bad this many times, maybe it's no longer stupid. At that point in time, then you should realize that you have evidence that this person isn't being stupid, right? You have a track record of this person doing all these things, then you have reason to believe that they're guilty of not just being stupid. Remember Occam's razor too? Yeah, it's possible that those 35 girls were just his long-lost stepsisters. Or yeah, it's also possible that you just misheard the self-proclaimed prophet that has a 100% success rate with his visions, and you just misheard everything he said, and this time he'll actually be correct with his foresight. But is it probable? And in that case, then if you can no longer attribute whatever they did to just being stupid, then you should look to attributing it to them being malicious, right? This also happens with scammers on YouTube, right? Like people that are like pump and dumping. Or this also happens with like pyramid schemes, conspiracy theories, and all those things, right? When someone has something to gain and then they do all these things and have bad track record, it might be wise to go to Occam's razor and realize that all these things that went wrong was probably not on accident. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk about two things that I just recently learned: Hitchens razor and Hanlon's razor. I've heard of Occam's razor, right? That's kind of that's more or less like common knowledge, but I never heard of the other two, and I was really interested, so I just wanted to share. But that's all I have to say. Have a good day.